Hi everyone, this is Lynn Kaplan coming to you from Southwest Florida with my review of the 2024 National Mahjong League card. Was it just my imagination, or did 2023 seem to fly by in the blink of an eye? It's hard to believe that it's time for me to review the new 2024 card. My initial impression is that I find this card to be creative with lots of interesting options and patterns to play. Please remember that this review is geared to beginners. I will go over each individual hand and point out many helpful hints. You can request a copy of my written notes that go along with this video by emailing Lynn Kaplan, that's Lynn K-A-P as in Paul, L-A-N 38 @gmail.com. And I will be repeating that at the end of this video so that you have it. As I have said in the past, since I am using the National Mahjong League card for teaching purposes, there is no need to report me to the Mahjong police. With all that being said, let's get started. I am going to point out some very specific things right up front that I get a lot of questions on from beginners. I want you all to please remember that the colors on the card simply reflect the number of suits required for that particular hand. It's always been a pet peeve of mine that the league uses the colors green and red, since novice players have a tendency to think that the green represents our bams and that the red represents our cracks. No, just remember, one color equals any one suit, two colors equals any two suits, and three colors equals any three suits. In other words, the color on the card does not dictate suit. Okay? I also want to cover some definitions. A single is one tile. No jokers allowed. A pair is two like tiles. No jokers allowed. A pung, which is a set of three like tiles, you can use as many jokers as you want in a pung. These could all be jokers, or you could have one or two. In a kong, it is four like tiles. Again, as many jokers as you want in a kong. A quint is five like tiles, and of course we would have to add a joker in order to make a quint, and you could use as many jokers as you wanted in a quint. There are no sextets on this year's card. I also want to point out that when you make the 2024 or the news, those are not considered kongs, and I am going to mention that numerous times throughout this review. When we make the 2024, which is in this last hand in the 2024 category, you cannot use jokers. Those are considered single tiles. That's not a bona fide kong. A kong is four like numbers. Another example would be for news. In news here, you cannot use jokers. Those are single tiles. Okay, let's get started on the new card. The first category is 2024. The first hand I've already made, okay? We've got a pung of twos, a pung of soaps, a kong of twos, and a kong of fours, okay? The common pattern this year is pung, pung, kong, kong. In other words, 3, 3, 4, 4. This is what I consider a very nice, easy, callable hand because there's no singles or pairs. So you can call everything for an exposure as long as you're playing an exposed hand, which this one is. Just as a friendly reminder, the only tile in Mahjong that acts as a 0 is the white dragon, also known as the soap. Okay? When it is used as a 0, it can be used with any suit. Some beginners think that, since that is the dragon that goes with dots, that would have to be, the 2024 would have to be in dots. No, it can be in any suit. Even if you look at the top of your Mahjong card, it says white dragon is used as 0. It may be used with any suit. Okay? So that is the first hand. Like I said, a very nice pung pung, kong kong, or 3-3, 4-4. Let's go to the second hand. Okay? First of all, we have 4 flowers. Okay? And please remember, with flowers, the numbers and the seasons mean nothing. A flower is a flower. Just like, remember Romeo and Juliet, a name by any other name is, a rose by any other name is still a rose. Same with flowers. They're just flowers. Okay? So in this hand, let's just keep these 2s up here because we need 4 of them. Then it calls for, let's just throw a joker in there. It calls for 4 soaps. And then this is a hand with any 2 suits. Okay? Now remember, this is the suit of cracks. Okay? This is non-suited when this is just the soaps. The dragons, when they act as 0s, you don't worry about the suit. So I am going to pick BAMs for the 24. This also could have been in dots. This also could be 2, 4 in dots, and you still have 2 suits. Okay? So this is our first hand with a Kong of Flowers. My recommendation on this hand is that you want to try to have at least the 2 or the 4 for the pair by the end of the Charleston, since you cannot use a joker with a pair. Now, needless to say, 2s and 4s are going to be very popular this year since we are now playing on the 2024 card. And I mention that because, year tiles is something that you want to try to prevent passing in the Charleston, okay? Listen, sometimes you do have to, pass 2s and 4s and flowers, what we consider risky tiles. It's going to happen. But if you have a choice, let's say between a 3 and a 4 or a 2, pass the 3. Okay? Okay, so now we're on hand number 3 in the 2024 category. And I have 2 flowers, 2024. And since the card says that the Kongs can be 2s or 4s, I've made this hand using 4s so that you can see the other example, okay? You need to remember that the Kongs have to match in the same number. They can either be all 2s or all 4s. So in other words, you cannot have one Kong of 2s and the other Kong of 4s. So in this particular hand, I would certainly want to try to have a good portion of that 2024 since you cannot use jokers. These are considered single tiles and you can never use a joker as a single tile. Okay. Let's go to the last hand in 2024, which is a concealed hand. Concealed hands, they have a higher value because there's a higher level of difficulty. Some beginners don't like to play concealed hands right off the bat because they're sitting there and, you watch your tiles go by as they're being discarded and you can't call them. This particular concealed hand starts with 2 Norse, 3 East, the 2024, 3 west, also known as a pung, and 2 souths. Okay. So where can we use jokers in this hand? No, yes, no, yes, no. Okay. So, like I said, since it's a concealed hand, be careful that you do not call for an exposure. You can, of course, call for your 14th tile if that gives you mahjong. So in other words, let's say you're playing this hand and all you need is 1 more west. And someone discards, says west, you say mahjong, and you put it on your rack and put up your other tiles. I believe this is a 30-cent hand because it's concealed, has 2 pairs, plus you've got the 2024 that you cannot call for an exposure unless the tile, like I said, that you're calling gives you mahjong. And again, I'm just gonna remind you that the 2024 can be in any suit. It does not have to be made in the suit of dots. So I could have made this, you know, with BAMs if I wanted to. Yeah. The soap is used as a 0 and can be used with any suit. I have a few notes that I made regarding the 2024 category. I want to point out that like number Kongs appear in 2 other categories. So when they refer to like Kongs in the same number, in hand number 3 in 2024, those are like Kongs. They also appear like Kongs down in the any like number category. Those are like Kongs, same number, set of 4. One other hand that has like Kongs is in consecutive run hand number 3. Those will be the same number Kongs, but in different suits. Why do I point this out? It's important to remember if one of your opponents exposes 2 Kongs in the same number, you can try to figure out what hand they are playing and play defensively. Okay? Something else I want to mention, that if someone exposes 4 soaps, let me set this up for you. If someone exposes 4 soaps and 4 twos, okay, the only hand that they can be playing is the number 2 hand in the 2022 category. So again, I mention this because, you know, playing strategy in mahjong is very, very important. So if you can attempt to figure out your opponent's hand, it will caution you as to tiles that you should not throw to give them mahjong. Now, if someone were to expose 4 flowers and 4 soaps, they could be playing either the number 2 hand, this hand right here in 2024 that we just made, or they could be playing the number 2 hand in Winds and Dragons, which we will eventually get to, okay? Because look, there's 4 flowers and there's 4 dragons. Again, it just helps you to be a defensive player. Just as a note, we have 6 hands this year with Kongs of flowers, and I will mention them later on. Jokers may only be used in groups of 3 or more like tiles. So in other words, if you have a pung, this is a pung of 3 like tiles, they all match, as many jokers as you want. Same if this was a Kong, as many jokers as you want. If this was, you know, if you were playing in Quints, okay, you could use as many jokers as you wanted. But when you make 2024, the 2024, or you make news, no jokers are allowed. Zeros and flowers are suitless, so it's customary that their color always appear as blue on the card. So you can see here, because those are considered non-suited tiles, so they always just show up in blue. Okay, let's go to the 2, 4, 6, 8 category now. This is our even number, so after the Charleston, if you have a lot of even tiles, this is the category that you would play. The first hand can be made in 1 suit or 2 suits. Exact numbers as they appear. This is our friendly pung pung kong kong, and I will go ahead and make that a pung of 2s, a pung of 4s, and then we have 6s and 8s. Okay, this is a great hand to play. Like I said, if you end up with a lot of even tiles after the Charleston. Okay, so this I made it in 2 suits, or you can make it in 1. Again, this is a nice, easy hand because everything is callable. What do I mean by callable? If you're playing this hand and you have, let's say, 2 2-bams in your rack, and someone discards a 2-bam, call, you pick up the tile, put it on top of your rack, and make your exposure. That's what I call a callable hand. Okay, let's go to the next hand. Well, let me see if I have any. Oh, okay. So this hand, we have, let's just shift some things over to try and save some time. We have 4s. This is 3 suits. So we know we need to have our bams, cracks, and dots. Okay. 2, 4, 4, 6, 8. 3 different suits. I would certainly try to have a good part of my pairs at the end of the Charleston, since that's the most difficult part of this hand. Okay, let's move along. Third hand. Well, we see 1 color, so we know we just have to concern ourselves with 1 suit. 1 color equals 1 suit. And this is where you need to know your matching dragon. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, and our matching dragon for bams is green. Throw a joker in there, okay? 2, 4, 6, 8, pair, pair, pung, pung, with a Kong of like dragons. I just want to remind you that the league posts on the back of the card matching dragons. So if you're playing and if you're uncertain of what the matching dragon is, just take a glance back here. I know some beginners actually will highlight that area if they have to refer back to it. Okay. Next hand in 2, 4, 6, 8. Well, we have multiplication. I was never really good at multiplication, to tell you the truth, and I'm not real fond of these multiplication hands. But if the tiles, I always say, if the tiles speak to me and I have those tiles, especially if I start out with a bunch of flowers, I would definitely look in this category. So I am going to make this first hand in 2, 4, 6, 8, fourth hand down. We have 3 colors, so we need 3 suits, okay? So I'm going to use bams. I'm going to use dots for the 6s. I'll use a joker. And that 24 has to be in what suit? Cracks. That's our 3rd suit, okay? Kong of flowers, as many jokers as you want. Kong of 4s, as many jokers as you want. My 6s in a 2nd suit, as many jokers as you want. 24, no jokers. That is a pair of tiles. Okay? You can also make this hand 6 times 8 equals 48. okay? Just remember, the most important thing with this particular hand is that it's 3 suits. So again, if you start out with a bunch of flowers and have these numbers, go for it. But just be mindful of the pair since no jokers are allowed. Next hand, okay, pair of flowers, 2s and 4s, 6s and 8s. You can do it in 1 suit or 2 suits. Let's make this hand in 2 suits, okay? So we're going to use, let's go to something different. Let's use some 2 dots. We're making this hand right here. Okay, I'll throw in a joker. Now I have a pair of 4s and a pair of 6s. Can I use jokers? No, the answer is no, you cannot. Now, I just realized that's a different color. What does that mean? I need a different suit. So, I cannot use dots. I will use cracks, and I will use the 3rd suit needs to be in the same suit as my 2s because it's the same color. So this Kong has to be 8 dots. Okay. So there's that hand. Pair of flowers, my 2s and 8s match in the same suit, 4s and 6s in the same suit. No jokers, no jokers, no jokers. As many as you want, as many as you want. I'm surprised that this is only a 25-cent hand and not a 30-cent hand, since there are 3 pairs in this hand. You know, my advice is always to be sure you have a good majority of those pairs before selecting this hand to play. Last hand in 2, 4, 6, 8. It's concealed. Okay. The 2 4s and 6s are all in the same suit, so what does that mean? Or in the same color, it all has to be in the same suit. Okay. So 2, 4, 6, same suit. Got to take those 8 dots away because those 8s are in 2 other colors. So what are my other 2 suits? Cracks and bams. This is a very difficult hand, I have to admit. This is going to be a challenge. First of all, it's concealed, and secondly, it has 3 pairs. Actually, it has, did I make it correctly? Just bear with me. Nope, I need another 2 here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Every hand in Mahjong consists of 14 tiles. Okay, so I forgot a 2. Pair of flowers, pung of 2s. Pair of 4s, pung of 6s. And then 8s. They have to be 8s. Sometimes I'll get asked, well, Lynn, since I'm in the 2, 4, 6, 8 category, could they be 2, 4, 6s? No, if they could be, the league would have written that out here in the verbiage. And I'm going to mention this. It is so important that when you're playing a hand to read the verbiage, okay? Up here in this 3rd hand in 2024, that verbiage is very important because those Kongs, they don't have to be 2s. They could be 4s. So be sure you read the verbiage. Okay? So I think that we are finished with the 2, 4, 6, 8 category. Let's go to any like numbers. Any like numbers I love this year because all of the hands are open. Remember last year, the last hand was concealed? Well, this year, all of the hands are now open. So you can call for everything. All right, that first hand. Now, what does it mean, any like number? It means that you can use any number that you want, but remember, they have to match in the hand. So I'm going to make this first hand in a different number than 1s. I think I will use 4s, okay? So let's make that hand in 4s. A pung in 1 suit, Now they want a Kong in a second suit, and the third Pung has to be in the third suit. Well, I've used cracks, I've used dots. My third suit, go ahead and say it, BAMs. Okay. So you see, you can make these hands in any number that you want, but the number has to match. In other words, if I had 4 here and 5s here and 6s here, no, that you would be declared your hand is dead, okay? So that's that hand. This is a great hand to play. You've got a Kong, a Pung, a Kong, and a Pung. Everything is callable. As many jokers as you want in all of those melds. Okay. Next hand gets a little bit more interesting. First of all, we do not need flowers. Let's just keep our 4s up there, but we just need a pair with matching dragons. What dragon goes with cracks? Red, okay? How do I remember that red goes with cracks? Well, first of all, the predominant color on cracks is red. And I remember when I first started teaching, I would say, well, think of like cracks on the sidewalk, and if you fall on a sidewalk, you're gonna start bleeding, and what color is red? So anyway, remember it however you can, and as always, if you can't remember, switch to the back of the card. All right, so requiring a Pung of matching dragons. Okay, our next 4s, pair of 4s, requires a Pung of matching dragons. That would be our soaps, okay? Again, I'll use a joker. And then we need another Kong of 4s in the third suit, which would be BAMs. We've got cracks, we've got dots, our third suit is BAMs. No jokers, no jokers. As many jokers as you want, here, here, and here. Again, please remember, the numbers have to match. They have to be like, okay? Like means same. The last hand does not require our dragon, so we'll put those back. Gee, it was so neat when I first started, wasn't it? Oh well. Okay, this last hand has a pair of flowers. And then we're gonna just use 4s again, since that seems to be right close by to me. And news. This is our, I think this is our first of 2 news hands. And we need an east, west, and south. And then we have a different color, but it has to be the same number. We'll just go back to our BAMs. Okay. Flower, flower, Kong of 4 cracks, news, north, east, west, south, and then a Kong of 4s in a different suit. Okay. No jokers, no jokers here. These are single tiles. You only have 1 north and 1 east. The only way this would be a bona fide Kong is if this was like 4 north or 4 east, okay? These are single tiles, no jokers. The notes that I have for the any like numbers category is that the exposed like pungs in this hand, you also have exposed pungs in the number 6 hand under consecutive run, and in the number 2 hand and the number 4 hand in the 3, 6, 9 category. Now, again, why is that important? If an opponent exposes 2 sets of pungs, you can try to figure out what hand they are playing. So again, there are 3 hands that have exposed like pungs. It would be in this number 1 hand in any like numbers, this number 6 hand in under consecutive run, and in the number 2 hand in 3, 6, 9, and also the number 4 hand in the 369 category. There are 2 hands on this year's card with exposed dragon pungs. That's in this number 2 hand that we just discussed in any like numbers, and also the number 2 hand in Winds and Dragons. Okay. So if a player has 2 pungs of dragons exposed, you can really narrow it down as to which hand they are possibly playing. Okay. So that has to do with exposed dragon pungs. It's either going to be that like number hand, or they're playing Winds and Dragons. The other news hand, if besides any like numbers, you're going to find in Winds and Dragons, and we'll get there in a bit. And like I mentioned before, what I like that now this 3rd hand is exposed. It's not concealed. Now, again, I'm going to mention, just because, you know, this pung of D's are in green and the other pung of D's are in red, it does not mean it requires green dragons and red dragons. If the hand requires red dragons, it will be designated as an R. If green dragons are required, it will be indicated by a G, okay? So please, please, please keep that in mind when you're playing. Please remember that you can use any like number. It's not just ones, but just be sure that you use the same number in the hand. In other words, you can't use like 2s and 3s, you know, 4s and 6s. They have to be the exact same number for the melds. Okay. All right, so we're now doing the addition hands, lucky 7s. I've made this hand with a pair of flowers, a Kong of 1s, a Kong of 6s, and a Kong of 7s, all in one suit. Okay. It must be these numbers, okay? That's why this category is called lucky 7s. All of these numbers add to 7. But it has to be those numbers, either 1 plus 6, 2 plus 5, or 3 plus 4, and all in one suit. You know, these math categories have a tendency to be overlooked. To be honest, I'm not a big fan. But if during the Charleston you have a bunch of, you know, matching 7s and a pair of flowers, I would definitely check this category out. Okay. Let's go on to Quints. Okay, some very, very interesting quint hands this year. The first one is a pair of flowers, and then it says any 3 consecutive numbers. So I don't want to copy the card. I want to give you all another example that you can do. So my numbers are going to be 6, 7, 8. Here's my 8s. And we'll just throw up some more jokers. Isn't it wonderful when we get jokers, our favorite? So here we are, a pair of flowers. I have a quint of 6s, my pair of 7s, and a quint of 8s. Right? Any 3 consecutive numbers. That's why, again, it's important to read the verbiage. You could have 5, 6, 7. One suit. Now, if I'm playing a similar hand in the consecutive run category, let's say if I'm playing down here where it calls for 3 consecutive numbers in one suit, and, you know, if I'm playing that hand and I start pulling in a lot of jokers, I'm going to switch up to this quint hand. I'll especially do that if I have this pair, because as we know, that's the toughest part of any hand in Mahjong to get. Okay, second quint hand. This is just one of the most interesting hands on this year's card. It's any two suits. Quints, any two non-matching numbers, and any wind. So I'm just going to leave those 6s up there. I know I can't use the 8 cracks because it has to be a different suit and a different number. So I could use 4s. It's any two non-matching numbers. So these can be any numbers as long as they don't match in 2 different suits. And this Kong of wind can be any wind. So I'm just going to say that during the Charleston, I ended up with a lot of south. So there you go. That's the second quint hand. Any wind, and it's a Kong. Any two non-matching numbers. I've got 6s and 4s in 2 different suits. I love this hand. I have a feeling I'm going to be playing that hand a lot as long as I get jokers, if I'm lucky enough. Okay, let's go to the third quint hand. Any 2 suits, any 2 consecutive numbers. Okay, well, I'll just leave a pair of 6s up there and look around for my 7s, and I need a quint of 7s. So you know what? Since I don't see them around where I am, I'm just going to use a bunch of jokers. Now, the second set is in a different color. What does that mean? I need to use a different suit. So I'll use BAMs. 6, 7, 6, 7 in 2 different suits. Okay, I've got cracks and I've got BAMs. So, you know, if I'm playing the last hand in the consecutive run category, let's say I'm playing this hand down here, it's 2 consecutive numbers, right? And I start getting a lot of jokers, I will switch to this quint hand that I'm showing you here. But that's just how, I just want you to know that, you know, always keep in mind your options, especially when you get jokers in. And like this is a concealed hand, and this up here is an exposed hand, and I'm getting jokers in, I will definitely switch to that quint hand. Just be sure, like I said before, that the quint numbers are in 2 different suits. Okay. Oh, I apologize. That was on the hand before. The most difficult part of this hand are your pairs. Okay, so try to get a good majority of those pairs up front. Okay, let's go to the fourth hand in quints. Well, I see we have our first quint of flowers. Okay, this is actually the first hand that requires a quint of flowers. And then, please remember what I said. Just because those D's are in green does not mean it requires the green dragon. The dragon just has to be the opposite of whatever your number is. So in this particular case, since they're right in front of me, my number that I'm going to use is 7 cracks. Okay? And that's a quint. So for the dragon, what dragon could I use? Not the red, because red goes with cracks. So the only dragons that I could use are either the green or the dragon that goes with dots, which is the soap. Okay? So playing this hand, if I have cracks here, my dragons could be soap or greens. Let's play make-believe. Let's say these were in BAMs, okay? Now I know I can't use the green dragon. It would have to either be the red dragon or the soap. It's 2 suits. Again, reason why you need to know your matching dragons, okay? Let's see, what do I have to say about this hand? you have to, like I said, it had to be the two different suits. You know, if you use dragons that match the suit of your number, your hand will be declared dead, so be careful. Oh, the one thing that's interesting about this hand that I realized is that you really only need one joker to make this hand. And that's because this, first of all, is a Kong of dragons, right? So you could have those all natural. You have 5 flowers, but how many flowers are in a set of mahjong? 8, so you could actually have all natural flowers. This is the only place where you would actually need a joker, is this quint, because as you know, there are only 4 of each number in the game of mahjong. So I just find that interesting. You actually only need to have one joker to make that hand. Needless to say, you know, if you open with a few jokers, be sure to check out the quint category. If you're playing a different hand and you start pulling in a lot of jokers, try to switch to a quint hand. Just as a note, the only other hand requiring a quint of flowers is the number 6 hand in consecutive run. So if someone exposes a quint of flowers, you can really narrow down, because there's only 2 hands on this year's card that require a quint of flowers. All right, let's go to consecutive runs. Lots and lots of options this year on consecutive runs. As always, you know, we have the same numbers for the first 2 hands, meaning 1 and 2, but they just switch up the configuration. The pattern has changed. I think last year we had pairs on the ends. This year we've got pungs on the ends. I'm not even going to make those hands, okay? It's 1 suit and these numbers only. Okay? Let's go to the second hand. On this particular hand, it's any 4 consecutive numbers in any one suit, but the dragon has to be opposite the suit, okay? So I think, let's see, let's do 5, 6, 7. Okay, help me find my 8 cracks, thank you. So I use cracks, 5, 6, 7, 8. Who can tell me what that dragon cannot be? Let's start there. It cannot be the red dragon, because if you use the red dragon, you would only have 1 suit, okay? We have to have 2 suits. So that dragon, what are the other dragons other than reds? Green and soap, okay? So I could have 4 soaps here, or I could use the green dragon here, because they are the opposite suit from cracks, okay? Again, please remember, like I said, those D's, you know, just because they're in red does not mean that it requires red dragons, okay? Very, very, very important. It just has to be any opposite dragon from the suit that you use for the numbers. Okay. The third consecutive run hand, it's a pair of flowers and any 3 consecutive numbers. You can do it in 1 suit or 3 suits, okay? So let's just see if we can switch this up. I'm gonna make it in 3 suits. So we've got 5s. We'll have 6s. Throw up a couple of jokers. Okay, we're making this hand right here. 5, 6, my third number is 7. What suit do the 7s have to be in? I've got cracks, I've got bams. My third suit are dots. If you said dots, give yourself a star. Okay, so there's that hand. Any 3 suits. with a pair of flowers. You can do it in 1 suit or 3 suits. Okay. And again, if I'm you, I'm going to try to have at least one of those flowers by the end of the Charleston, because we know how difficult it can be to get pairs. Okay? And please remember, if you're playing a hand with pairs, and let's just take that particular hand that I just put down, but you know, let's say you have 1 flower in your hand, and the hand requires a pair of flowers, and someone discards a flower. You cannot call it. You cannot expose a pair. You cannot expose a single tile. You cannot expose a pair, okay? So if you call that flower and put up a pair, your hand's going to be declared dead. You cannot do that. You have to have at least 3 like tiles before you can start making exposures. Okay? All right, let's go to the next hand. All right, this hand is any 2 suits, any 3 consecutive numbers. So 6, 7, and I'll use 8 with a joker, okay? And then 6, 7, 8 in a second suit. 6, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8. Okay. This is a 30-cent hand because you've got 2 single tiles and 2 pairs. Okay. So I definitely want to have those after the Charleston, because singles and pairs, I know I'm being redundant, but they're difficult to get. You cannot use a joker here, 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 here. As many as you want here and here. All right, let's go to the next hand. All right. Any 4 consecutive numbers with matching dragons. I'm just going to leave this up here. 6, 7, 8. It's 4 consecutive numbers. So I need to have some 9 BAMs. Matching dragon. What's the matching dragon to BAMs? It is green. Okay. It's the green dragon. Okay. And that's that hand. If I had done this in cracks, those would be red dragons. If I did this in dots, those would be the white dragon, also known as soap. So again, try to secure those pairs because they can be tricky. So try to have them after the Charleston. And again, this is another example of why you need to know your matching dragons. Okay. Next hand. This is our second hand with a quint of flowers. Now, and this gets asked often, Lynn, can I use jokers with flower? Absolutely, as long as you have a pung, kong, or quint of any like tile, you can use as many jokers as you want, okay? So we've got a quint of flowers, and then it says any 3 suits, which we know because it's 3 colors, any 4 consecutive numbers, okay? So I'm going to, since it's close by, I'm going to use 6, 7, 8, okay? And then these pungs have to be in the 4th number. What's my 4th number? 9. So I need 9s in the opposite suit. So my 9s cannot use dots. I have dots here, I have BAMs here. What's the 3rd suit? Cracks. Okay, 3 suits, dots, BAMs, and cracks. Okay, so instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, I use 6, 7, 8, 9, 9. Okay, any 4 consecutive numbers. This is a 30-cent ham. Please remember that these first 3 numbers in the run are considered single tiles. You cannot use jokers. You cannot call for that. You cannot expose that. If someone, throws a 7 dot, you can't say call and put it on your rack. The only exception is if it's your 14th tile and it gives you mahjong, okay? So in other words, let's say you have all of this in your rack or even part of it exposed, and all you're waiting for is the 7 dot, and someone discards the 7 dot, mahjong, then you could call it, put it on your rack, and display your hand. Okay, let's go to the next hand in consecutive run. You can do this hand in 1 suit or 2 suits. Any 4 consecutive numbers, okay? Any 4 consecutive numbers. We'll go ahead and we're gonna leave those 9 cracks up there. We're gonna make this hand in 2 suits. I believe this is yet another hand that is our familiar pung, pung, kong, kong, okay? So let's see, we're gonna do 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's grab some 6s. 6, 7, I'll throw a joker up there. 6, 7, 8, 9. I did it in 2 suits. Okay. Now, it just so happens that I pulled the bams and cracks, but again, I'm going to mention the colors mean nothing. It has nothing to do with, designating the suit as bams and cracks. It's any 2 suits. This could have been dots, and this could have been bams, okay? So like I had mentioned before, this is, again, our ever-friendly pung, pung, kong, kong combination. This is a great hand for beginners to play because you can call everything. Last hand in consecutive run. Any 3 suits, any 3 consecutive numbers. Okay? So let's just leave our 6, 7 up there. We have to do another 6, 7 in a separate suit. So I will get some, we'll just do it in cracks. 6, 7, okay? We've got 6, 7, 6, 7. What is our 3rd number? Our 3rd number is 8. And what is our 3rd suit? Dots, okay? So I've got 3 suits, bams, cracks, and dots. 3 consecutive numbers, 6, 7, 6, 7, 8. Okay? So I like to show you the hands different than what they show on the card because, if I just show you, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, it's just copying the card. I want to show you how different combinations can be made on these hands. Okay? Now, my notes regarding the consecutive run area. When we play on a new card, we have to be very careful before calling for an exposure because we are dealing with new patterns. So just take your time and double check before you call the tile to make an exposure on your rack. And what I mean by that is, let's say you were playing this hand up here that required 3 6s or required a pung of any number. But let's say you were using 6s and you exposed it as a kong of 6s rather than a pung of 6s. You'd have to look for another hand. So that's why I'm saying be careful before you call for an exposure. There are lots of options this year with consecutive runs. These are usually popular with beginners since they are easy to organize and recognize during the Charleston. When you set your tiles up during the Charleston, be sure to set your tiles up by suit with matching dragons at the end of each respective suit. So let's say, I got some, 6s in. during the Charleston, and if I pulled a red, I would put it right at the end. And then let's say, you know, if I got an 8 in during the Charleston, I would put my matching dragon next to it. It helps you to find hands when you set your tiles up. I usually put my flowers over here because, as you notice on the card, the flowers are always to the left-hand side. So, you know, always try to set your hand up also like in, you know, consecutive order, you know, 2, 4, 6. You know, if I happen to have gotten, you know, like a 4, I put the 4 here. 4 if I got the 5, because hands will pop out at you. So that's just a, you know, a helpful hint when you're putting your hands together, your tiles together during the Charleston. Also, this comes up sometimes in some classes that I teach. Someone will inevitably ask me in consecutive runs if you can start with 0. The answer to that is no. The lowest number we go is 1. So in other words, you could not start a consecutive run like 0 and then, you know, say 1, you know, and then 2, 3. You couldn't have, you can't do that, okay? The lowest you can go starting a consecutive hand is 1. I just wanted to mention that. All right, let's now go to our odds category, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. The first hand, again, we had it last year. It's just that it's a different pattern this year. Again, I think we had the pairs at the end. Now we have pongs at the end. So we can make it in 1 suit or 3 suits. Let's make it in 3 suits, okay? So we've got a pung of 1s. Then we have a pair of 3s. Okay, that's in 1 suit. Then we need 5s in a second suit. So I think I'll grab my dots here. I'll put in a little joker in that Kong. And then we have 7, 9 in a different color, which means that has to be in our 3rd suit. Our 3rd suit is what? Bams. Give yourself a hand if you said bams. Okay? So there you have it. That's that hand. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 in 3 different suits. Like I said, this is a very similar pattern to last year's hand, but it's just been tweaked a little bit. Okay. So just be careful again when you call for exposures. You know, I remember last year, I think these 7s were a Kong. So, you know, just be careful. Check the hand really carefully. You know, when we start playing on a new card, you want to take your time. Speed should not be a factor. The only time speed is a factor is when you play in a tournament, okay? So just take your time, and before you call a tile for an exposure, make sure you're calling the correct number of tiles. The next hand, ooh, here we are again. Pung Kong, Pung Kong. So let's just add some tiles here. We need 3 1s, oopsies. 3 1s, 3 3s. I'm going to keep this pung of 5s here. And now we need a pung of 3 dots. Pung, pung, Kong, Kong. Love, love, love these nice, easy hands to play as long as you get the tiles. Right? That's that first hand. 1, 3, 3, 5, 2 suits. You could also play it 5, 7, 7, 9. You know, there's no singles or pairs here, so that's why it's a very callable hand. Okay, let's go to the third hand. All right, what do we see? We got 1 color, right? 1 color equals 1 suit. So let's just, let's leave these up here. We need a pair of flowers, a pair of 1s, a pung of 3s. We need a Kong of 5s. Let's Let's put some jokers in here. Okay. Matching dragons. What's the dragon that goes with our cracks? Reds. Roja. Okay. There's that hand. No jokers, no jokers. As many jokers as you want. Okay. You can make this hand 1, 3, 5 or 5, 7, 9. This is very similar to last year's hand, but with a pattern change, so just be careful again when calling for an exposure. Okay. Next hand. Aha, 3 colors, 3 suits. Goodbye flowers for now. So we've got 1, 3, 5, all in one suit. And then we need 7s in a second suit. What are our 9s going to be in? The third suit is BAMs. Okay. So this is a 30-cent hand, right? You've got 3 sets of pairs, and that's why it's a 30-cent hand. Just be mindful with this hand that it requires 3 suits, okay? Sometimes I think, you know, and I've done this where I'm thinking of this hand up here and I match it. I would be declared dead if I went mahjong and people went to confirm my hand and noticed that I had this in the same suit. Too bad. Okay, let's go to multiplication again. Like I said, not my favorite hands to play, but if I get these tiles in, I'll play it. All right, so let's just leave this up here. Now, this hand has to be played in how many suits? 3. So I'll use 3 cracks, and then I will use 5 BAMs. 3 times 5 equals 15. That 15 has to be in my third suit. My third suit is, did you guess dots? If you did, you're right. Okay? Kong of flowers. 3 times 5 equals 15. You can also do this hand 5 times 7 equals 35 in 3 different suits. The only thing that I'm going to mention in this hand, be mindful of the pair. Again, no jokers, and you cannot call it for an exposure. You can call a tile for mahjong if it's your 14th tile, but you could never call this for an exposure. Okay, next hand. Do not need flowers. We do need 1s and 3s, so we'll pick those 1s back up. We've got 1, 3 pairs, and then we need a pung of 3s. A pung of 5s I'll use because we have to make this in 3 suits. So I have cracks, I have BAMs. What are those Ds going to be? Did you say white dragon or soaps? You're right. Very good. Okay, there's that hand. No jokers, no jokers. As many as you want. Last hand in 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay, you could make this hand with either the 1, 3, 5s or the 5, 7, 9s. It is a concealed hand. So please be careful with what tiles you call. So I'm going to do 1, 3, hello Joker, 5. And then those have to be 3s. It doesn't say, well, it actually says these numbers only. What I was going to say is that those pungs could be either 1, 3, 5, 7s, or 9s, but no, it doesn't. It has to be those numbers. So I have to have 3s in the other 2 suits. Okay? So I've got my 1, 3, 5 in cracks. My pungs of 3s have to be in the other 2 suits. So I've got bams and dots. Okay. Let me see. So this is a concealed hand with a high level of difficulty. Even though you only need 1 pair, you will need 2 sets of like pungs in the 2nd and 3rd suit that matches your pair, depending on which hand you play. So, you know, in this hand, the pair is 3s, so these pungs are 3s. If you're playing this hand and that pair are 7s, then these would have to be 7s. So that's a lot of like numbered tiles. So that's going to be a very difficult hand in my opinion. I've noticed on this year's card that 7s are required in quite a bit of hands. So again, be mindful of passing 7s in the Charleston. You know, you might not need them, but your opponent may need them. Okay, Winds and Dragons. I'm not even going to take the time to make this hand because it's very obvious that you need 4 Norths, 3 East, 3 West, or 4 Souths, or in this combination. Again, please be careful. You know, when you make an exposure, okay? Let's say you're playing this hand and you have already exposed 4 Norths, and then you call for an exposure and you expose 4 Easts. Now you cannot make that hand. There's no hand on the card that has 4 Norths and 4 Easts. Your hand would be declared dead. So just be careful. The next hand, you've got 4 flowers. You know, this is the year of the dragon. So, you know, we all were happy when the league came back with the dragon hand. So again, the colors mean nothing. All the colors are telling you is that you need 3 different suits, okay? So, you've got your Kong of Flowers. There's 2 pungs of dragons required, so I've used soaps and reds. And then a Kong of the 3rd dragon. My 3rd dragon was green. Okay? So my 3 suits are represented. Dots, bams, and cracks. Those are the only dragons in the game of Mahjong. Okay? So again, at the end of the Charleston, if you have a lot of dragons, man, that is the hand to play, without a doubt. So as I mentioned to you before, there are those of us who are jumping for joy that the league brought back the multi-dragon hand. So we're thrilled. I like to be a dragon lady sometimes. And from what I understand, the year of the dragon is supposed to bring success and prosperity. Let's hope that prosperity is in the form of jokers this year, right? Okay, 3rd hand in Winds and Dragons. First of all, you can make it in North and South or East and West. You can't change that, okay? You can't have North and East or South and West. It has to be exactly as it appears. So we'll make that first hand. Let's say we're making it with North. We can throw some jokers in. North and South. Any 2 suits, any 2 consecutive numbers. Well, the 3s are in front of me, so I'm going to use 3. What's my next number have to be? 4 in a different suit. So let's just use 4 dots. Okay? So North, South. And I changed it up again because I feel it's a better teaching tool if I show you something different than what's reflected on the card. And since it says any 2 consecutive numbers, I use 3, 4, 2 separate suits. Okay. Let me check my notes on this hand so I can give you any other additional information. all I have put, well, this is another pung pung kong kong, so nice callable hand. I'm predicting that these are going to be popular hands to play since you can call for everything. Just remember that your numbers have to be consecutive and in 2 different suits. Okay? Say goodbye to the winds. Next hand. Not going to take the time to make it. It's a pair of flowers. It's a pair of Norse. It's a pung of east, a pung of west, and a kong of south. Okay? The only thing you can't call for in this hand are the flowers and the Norse because those are pairs and you cannot use jokers. Okay? Again, the only time you could call is if it makes your mahjong. Let's say the only thing you're waiting for is a flower and someone discards a flower. Mahjong. Okay. Next hand. This is a 30 center because we have 3 pairs. Okay. It can be done in north-south. Have you noticed how the league always puts together like the north and the south and the east and the west? So that's something that you should remember, that, you know, in a lot of times you're not going to have hands where like norths are required and wests are required. It's usually north, south, and east and west. Okay, so I've got the joker here and some norths. And then the league says it's any 3 consecutive numbers. I'm not going to use the 1, 2, 3. I want to show it to you differently. So we're going to use 3, 4, 5. Okay. 3 consecutive numbers, north and south. I would certainly try to secure the majority of these pairs up front before playing this hand. Those pairs can be difficult to get. Okay, let's put this back and move to the next hand. More dragons. I love it. Let's just keep, well, we just need 1. This is our second and final news hand. Okay, and why do we call it news? Because that's what it spells out. North, east, west, and south. We need a pair of flowers. We need any dragon. Again, I'm going to mention that just because it's green does not mean that it requires a green dragon. If they wanted a green dragon, it would be G's there. Okay, so we need a kong of dragons and a second dragon. So we'll just use greens here. Okay, so again, this could be cracks, right? This could be greens and reds. This could be reds and white, or soap, as it's more familiarly known as. Okay, so with this particular hand, again, I'm going to mention no jokers. This is not a kong. These are single tiles. They don't match. Okay, so please remember that. If you're playing this hand, okay, and let's say someone discards a north and you go call and you discard this, meld like that, your hand's going to be declared dead. You cannot call it. Now, if you're sitting and waiting for mahjong and all you need is a south and someone discards a south mahjong, then you can call it for mahjong. You just can't call it for an exposure. Okay. All right, last hand in News and Dragons. It's concealed. Okay. We have 3 norths. We have an east and a west. We have a pung of south. And then we have any like number. The key word is like. They have to match, but in different suits, okay? So I chose my number to be 3 because that's just what I ended up with in the Charleston. I ended up with a bunch of 3s, okay? north, east, west, south, any two suits, any like numbers. I have threes and bams and dots. These could have been cracks, whatever, okay? Just remember, this is a concealed hand. You cannot call for this east or west because those are single tiles and no jokers. As many jokers as you want here, here, here. You know, because we have so many pattern changes with a new card, when someone declares Mahjong, before you do something like that, you know, toss your tiles on the table, be sure to check that they did in fact make an accurate Mahjong. You know, I often have beginners ask me if they can use a joker as a single or in a pair if it gives them Mahjong, and the answer is an absolute no. You can never use a joker as a single tile or in a pair. This includes news and the 2024 combination. You know, where did we have the, we had news here, and in 2024, even if you have a joker at the end of the game or whatever, you can never use a joker here, ever, ever, ever. I hope I've made that clear. All right, let's go on to 369. Okay, so the first hand, now needless to say in this category, all of these hands are going to have 3s, 6s, and 9s. So, you know, during the Charleston, if you accumulate a lot of 3s, 6s, and 9s, look in this category. I kind of play this category in conjunction with 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 because you know, both categories have 3s and 9, so just keep that in mind. All right, the first hand is 2 suits. The second hand is 3 suits. This is our friendly pung, pung, kong, kong again, 3, 3, 4, 4. Let's make this hand in 3 suits. So 3s, and then we have 6s. I'll use a joker. And then it has to be a second suit. So let's use bams. 3, 6, 6, 9. Pung, pung, kong, kong. Oops, I meant to say, okay, well, this is the first hand. I want to make it in 3 suits. So what's my third suit? Let me hear. Cracks, yay, you're right. And we'll throw a joker up here and one more joker. So that's that hand. 3, 6 in one suit. That Kong of 6s in a second suit, the 9s in a third suit. Okay, let's go to the second hand. What do we have? Oh, let's see if I had any notes on that first hand. Oh, not just that it's a nice easy hand if you get those tiles because it's the pung, pung, kong, kong. Okay, second hand in 3, 6, 9. We're going to take a pair of flowers, and then we have a 3, 6, 9 in one suit. So I'll use cracks as long as I can find some 6 cracks here. There we go. And I can use a joker here. And then this is what the card says. Pungs, 3s, 6s, or 9s. But they have to be like pungs. What does that mean? That means they have to match in the same number. So these pungs can be all 3s, all 6s, or all 9s. I'm going to show you the example. Let's use 6s for the pungs, okay? They have to be in the other 2 suits, but in the same number. So I've got cracks here. These are bams. My third suit is dots. Matching pungs, like pungs, either in 3s, 6s, or 9s. I have a feeling that some people are going to mess up on this hand in that they're going to forget that these have to match, that they're going to do something like this. They're going to put 3s up here. This does not match, okay? You see how these 3s match, these pungs match? That's what it has to be. They have to match in either all 3s, all 6s, or all 9s. So in other words, if I put up with the threes, 3 dots, that's a legitimate hand now, okay? I could also do this in 9s, okay? Then these would be 9 bams, okay? So just remember, the pungs have to match in the same number. Very, very, very important. You know, I would also try to have at least 1 flower, okay? And you know, that's a single tile and that's a pair. Before I play this hand, I would want to have a good majority of this portion of the hand. Okay, let's go to the next hand. Okay. You can either make this hand in 1 suit or 3 suits. Okay, 3, 6, 9. So a pair of flowers. Let's do it this way. We'll have 3 cracks here. I'm starting to use a lot more jokers because my tiles are getting a bit scattered about. Okay, so that hand, you can either make it in 1 suit or 3 suits. I've done it in 3. Okay, cracks, bams, and dots. As far as this hand goes, again, this, my comment to this hand is that it should be called the King of Kongs, because you got Kong, Kong, Kong. Again, try to have 1 flower by the end of the Charleston. Okay. Wow, we're moving right along, aren't we? Here in sunny Bonita Springs, Florida. I should say that my husband and I just relocated from Vermont. We sold our home in Vermont, and we are now full-time residents of Estero, Florida. So I do this video at my best friend's house because her husband is so good with video equipment, and I can't thank them enough. Okay, let's go, and they live in Bonita Springs, so that's why I'm here from Estero, which is right next door. All right, let's go to the next hand in 3, 6, 9. This is a very, very interesting hand. Any 2 suits, pungs, 3s, 6s, or 9s with matching dragons. So in other words, these pungs can either be matching 3s, 6s, or 9s. You can't have 3s and 9s, they have to match. So let's build it in 6s. Okay. Again, I don't like to copy the card. So we're gonna do those pungs in 6s. So what do my dragons need to be? Dots are, yep, you're right, the soap. And my bams are green. Okay. There you go. That's that hand. So again, these could be matching 3s, 6s, or 9s. If you have something like this for this hand, you're dead. You can't have 3s and 6s, okay? You'd be dead anyway because this isn't the matching dragon to those 3 cracks. But let's just say, you know, you did that. You had 3s and 6s. That's a dead hand, all right? Okay, let me check my notes. Okay, I think I have covered everything that I wanted to in that hand. Let's go to the next one. Oh, this is a 30-cent hand. So this is kind of an interesting hand. You see how the 3s and 9s match? What does that tell you? That the 3s and 9s have to be in the same suit, okay? So I've chosen dots for my 3s and 9s. The middle numbers have to be 6s in the other 3 suits. What are our 3 suits? Cracks, bams, and dots. Okay? Cracks, bams, and dots. Those are your 3 suits. Has to be 6s. This is a difficult hand. Those 3 pairs, gonna be tough. So, you know, what I wanna, you know, really kind of, stress is that you need to be sure that the Kongs of 3s and 9s match, okay? And I'm going to mention this again for beginners, that you cannot call for an exposure on these pairs, okay? The only exception is if it's your 14th tile for Mahjong. So if you've got everything else in this hand and someone throws a 6 dot, then you say call, and then you can make the exposure for Mahjong. Okay. All right, let's see. This hand requires, again, you really got to know your opposite dragons this year. Got to. And this is another hand that's requiring opposite dragons. So we've got a Kong of Flowers. We've got 3, 6, 9. Well, I'm only using BAMs because I just see it close to me, okay? Even though it's green, I could use cracks or I could have used dots, but these were close by, okay? Now, any opposite dragon. So, what is opposite? My dots are opposite from BAMs, and so are my reds. So this hand could have been made with the red dragon or with the white dragon or soaps, because we use BAMs for the 3, 6, 9. Okay. Study those dragons is my recommendation this year. Year of the Dragon. Last hand in 3, 6, 9. It's concealed, okay? It's a concealed hand, so higher level of difficulty. Let's see. So we want 3, 6. Hello, 6 cracks. There's another one, and there's another one. Okay, so we've got Pung Pung, and then we've got Pung Pung, 3, 6 in dots. What's our third suit? BAMs. So that pair of 9s will have to be in BAMs. Okay. 3, 6, 3, 6, 9. Okay. Concealed hand. Have a good, have at least one of those 9s if I was playing this hand. Okay. Again, be sure not to call for any exposures. It's a concealed hand. The only time that you can call for a tile on a concealed hand is if it is your 14th tile and gives you Mahjong. Okay. So, singles and pairs. I know a lot of beginners are kind of intimidated by singles and pairs because, listen, they are the highest level of difficulty. Look at the values, 50 cents, 50 cents, 75 cents. Don't be frightened. I'm going to point out to you other hands that you can play if by chance, like you start pulling in jokers if you're playing in singles and pairs. Because, all these singles and pairs, there's no jokers allowed. So that first singles and pair hand is 2, 2. Now this is probably going to take me a while, so I apologize because our tiles did get kind of mixed up. But let's say I do 2, 2, and then 4, 6, and then 8, 8, and cracks, okay? And then the next part has to be in a second suit. So let's use BAMs. So 2, 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 8. All right? So let's say you're playing this hand because during the Charleston, you ended up with a lot of these tiles. But all of a sudden, you started pulling in jokers. Okay? We have a category for every single singles and pairs hand, a corresponding category. So if you start pulling in jokers, come over here. Come over to your 2, 4, 6, 8 category and find a comparable hand, okay? Here's a hand here that's got 2 different suits. So that's what I'm going to suggest to you when you play these singles and pairs. If you start pulling in jokers, switch out to the comparable category, right? Same with the singles and pairs in with this 1, 3, 5, 5, 7, 9 hand. You need a pair of flowers, okay? Let's say we'll use 1s, 3s, 1s, and 3s, and 5s for the first part of that hand. And then the second part, 5, 7, 9, has to be in a second suit. 5, well, I'll grab the 9s while I see them. 9, and here are my 7s, okay? So, you're playing this hand and you start pulling in jokers. We have a whole category over here, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Just switch out to that category. Now, what I want to point out about this next set of hands, it has to be those numbers, okay? It has to be the 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, or the 9, 9, 8, blah, 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 blah. So if you get a lot of those numbers during the Charleston, please look in this category, okay? If by chance you start getting jokers, okay, what category are you going to go to? Consecutive run, okay? You already have consecutive numbers here, right? So if you start pulling in jokers, go to a hand in consecutive runs. I'll go ahead and make this next. You know, these hands here I'm not making because it's those numbers only in 3 suits. It's spelled right out. Okay, the next hand, 3, 6, 9. I bet you're already thinking ahead about what category you can play in for this particular hand, right? 3, 6, flower, flower, 3, 6, 9. And then we have to make it in 2 more suits. And I know I'm missing my flowers. I hear you all going, oh, she forgot to put the flowers on the rack. Okay, we've got cracks, we've got bams. What's our 3rd suit? Dots. You are correct. Again, wow. You're doing good. You're listening to me. I can hear you all the way here in South Florida. Pair of flowers, 3, 6, 9s in pairs in 1 suit, 3, 6, 9 in a second suit, 3, 6, 9 in a 3rd suit, okay? Again, this is so obvious. If you start getting in jokers, just come up here. Look at all these hands we have in 3, 6, 9s, okay? All right, let's put this next hand together. This is an interesting hand. Again, here are the dragon. We have another hand with dragons. Any 5 consecutive numbers, okay, in any suit, all right? So let's just say I'm going to use BAMs because I caught them out of the corner of my eye here. So we're going to start with 2, 3, and it's going to go up to, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are going to be my consecutive numbers. Okay, and I need a 4. Somebody help me find a 4 BAM. There we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have it in BAMs with opposite dragons. What are my 2 other suits? My other 2 suits are cracks, which require the red dragon, and dots, which require the white dragon. Okay, so any 5 consecutive numbers, opposite dragons. Now, if I'm playing that hand and I start pulling in jokers, again, I'm switching to consecutive run because I already have consecutive numbers. And look, there's even a hand here with 4 consecutive numbers. Now that requires matching dragon, so be careful. This consecutive run up here requires opposite dragon, so I would probably play that hand in conjunction with this hand. Okay. The last hand, what's often referred to as the big hand of MAH, I have to tell you, I think this hand is wonderful this year. You know, I think that it's going to be played quite a lot because it's my opinion that the league has made it a bit easier for us, which is nice. So you've got a 2024 in any suit, and then you have winds, north. We've got to have an east and a west. We have to have two norths. Remember, there's no jokers allowed. These are singles and pair hands, no jokers. I can't stress that enough. And we need another south. Where did my souths go? Hello, where are you? Well, I would sing for a commercial interruption, but I have a terrible voice. There, I found my south. And then they want another 2024 in a second suit. So I see my twos here and a 4 crack. That is this year's big hand. It's 75 cents, okay? And instead of having to make 3 2024s, in other words, in all 3 suits, this year we just have to do it in 2 suits and with the wins. And what I like about this, and if you've played Mahjong for a little bit, you'll notice that sometimes the wins will go around in the Charleston because no one is playing them. Well, I can guarantee you that if I open in the Charleston with 2 soaps and a couple 2s and 4s, and the wins are going around, I'm gonna snag those wins and play that big hand. I guarantee you that. So, and please, you know, don't shy away from singles and pairs. Like I said before, if you start getting jokers, just switch to the corresponding category. So, you know, singles and pairs have the highest degree of difficulty because they are concealed and because you can't use jokers. But this fact should not dissuade you from playing these hands. Always remember that if you are playing in the singles and pair category, there is a similar hand in a corresponding category on the card. I've already shown you that. So if you start pulling in those nice jokers that we all love, switch out to the comparable grouping on the card. So there you have it. I've made every single hand on the card this year. I do have some miscellaneous notes that I'm going to go through, okay? So we want to check our hands carefully before committing to an exposure. The patterns have changed on the new card, so you want to be sure you are exposing the correct number of tiles. There are a total of 73 hands on this year's card. There are 2 hands that have the 2024. It's number 4 in the 2024 category, and it's number 6 in the singles and pair, the big hand that we just went over. Okay, those are the only 2 hands that have 2024. And I just want to point out again, those are concealed hands, okay? So be careful with concealed hands. There are 2 hands that have news. The number 3 hand in like numbers, and the number 6 hand in Winds and Dragons. If someone exposes a pung of flowers, okay, 3 flowers, and a quint of dragons, let me just set it up here for you. If someone exposes something like that, declare their hand dead. There's no such hand on this year's card. There are 2 hands with a quint of flowers. That's 5 flowers. Okay. That's number 4 in Quints and number 6 in consecutive run. There are 6 hands with kongs of flowers. Number 2 in the 2024 category, number 4 in the 2468 category, number 1 in any like numbers, number 5 in the 13579 category, number 2 in Winds and Dragons, and number 6 in 369. Why do I point this out? Because if someone exposes a Kong of flowers, and especially if they make a second exposure, you have a much better chance of figuring out what hand they are playing. During the Charleston, avoid passing like numbers in pairs. I believe 44% of the hands on this year's card require like numbers, okay? So just keep that in mind. Remember, we had like numbers here, we had like numbers up here, a whole category. 2s and 4s are hot commodities since we have a category devoted to 2024, and the last hand in singles and pairs also has the 2024. So you try not to pass tiles that are considered hot commodities, okay? You know, I'm gonna go ahead and put them up on my rack, what we consider hot commodities this year. Like 2s are hot, 4s are hot because we're in the 2024. The white dragon is hot, again, because it has dual purpose. You know, any of your other dragons, because look at how many dragons are on this year's card, okay? So flowers, dragons, and year tiles are considered risky tiles to pass in the Charleston. Are you going to have to pass them? Absolutely, I pass them all the time. But if you have the choice, try not to pass these. Another thing I want to mention, discard your riskier tiles early on in play. So when the game begins, like let's say, you know, you've selected your hand and you know you don't need a flower or a white or red, discard them at the beginning, because the longer you hold on to those risky tiles, there's a much higher chance that you're giving your opponents the opportunity to gather tiles to make their hands, and so later on in the game, you could actually be throwing them their mahjong tiles. So risky tiles, get rid of them as quickly as possible. You know, as I've mentioned before, flowers are dangerous to pass during the Charleston, especially since there are 42% of the hands on this year's card have flowers. So as soon as you know that you do not need flowers for your hand, discard them immediately, okay? You want to pass a wind tile in the Charleston before a dragon, since there are 19 hands, that's 26%, that require dragons on this year's card. So again, if during the Charleston, you need to pick between a wind and a dragon, to pass the wind. Okay? Before committing to a hand, try to have your single and or pair tiles. We know how difficult it is to get our singles and pairs. Once again, I'm going to mention that you can use use any number of jokers in a pung, kong, and quint. You know, let's say you're playing a hand and that needs, like, let's just say 3-4 cracks. You could actually have 3 jokers for those 3-4 cracks, okay? Same goes for a Kong or Quint. They can all be jokers. You'd be so lucky to get that many jokers, huh? So the soap or white dragon is always the most dangerous dragon to pass in the Charleston because it has dual purpose. Remember, it's the only tile that acts as 0 with any suit, and it's also the matching dragon to dots. Remember that the safest tile that you can discard in mahjong is a joker, because no one can call a joker. This is especially important toward the end of the game. When you know that you are not going to be able to make your hand, the safest tile to throw is a joker. A lot of beginners have a difficult time with this concept because they don't want to get rid of their jokers. But when you look at the number of tiles that are left to play and you realize there are not enough tiles that you're going to make your mahjong, the safest tile to throw is a joker, because no one can call a joker. I can't say that enough. Throw a joker when you know you cannot make your hand, okay? Be sure to check the new card carefully before committing to your first exposure. You don't want to claim a discard for an exposure on a concealed hand, or worse yet, play a hand from a previous year. I was playing the other day and someone declared Mahjong, and we didn't recognize the hand, and it turned out she was playing with the 2023 card. So just be careful when you make an exposure, and just make sure that you're not making an exposure on a concealed hand also. When another player declares Mahjong, it is extremely important that you verify that it is in fact an accurate Mahjong. When we play on a new card, mistakes are common because we are accustomed to playing on the old card. Before you toss your tiles in, be sure to check that your opponents have in fact made a valid Mahjong. You know, it's also a great learning tool. I just want to mention this, that when checking someone's Mahjong, then if in fact it is a good Mahjong, it's a good way for you to learn about all the new hands on the new card. Okay? If you are playing a hand that requires a single or a pair, be sure to watch the tiles that are discarded. If you discover that your tiles have already been discarded and you will be unable to complete the single or pair required, try to switch to another hand. If that is not possible, simply play defensively. Remember that the safest tile to discard in Mahjong is a joker. No one can call a joker. So let me give you an example, okay? Let's say you're playing the second hand in 2024, and you're playing the 24, it has to be BAMs. That's how your hand is being played. That 2 and a 4 need to be BAMs. You know you cannot use a joker. All of a sudden you look out in the tiles that have been discarded and you realize that there are 4 2 BAMs on the table. You know you're not going to be able to make that tile. So you either switch to another hand or you play defensively and just discard jokers if you have them, or just your safest tiles. And finally, you know, the league has once again placed the concealed hands as the last row in each section of the card. Some beginners like to highlight all of the concealed hands as a reminder that they are in fact concealed, and to be mindful that an exposure cannot be called for, unless of course it's your Mahjong tile. I know that it always feels a bit intimidating at first when we get a new card. So my recommendation is always to play, play, play. This allows you to get familiar with the new hands and patterns. I've listed websites on my written notes that you can go on to play with the bots, AKA robots, and you can play at your own pace. I also recommend that you make each hand on the card by physically building each hand like I just did with tiles from your Mahjong set. I really hope that this evaluation of the 2024 card proves to be helpful. I know that new cards can be daunting at first, but just be patient. It does take time and practice to feel comfortable playing the new hands. But I promise you that each time you play, it will get better, okay? I will remind you once again that you can email me at LynnKaplan38@gmail.com to request a copy of my written notes. That's LynnKaplan38@gmail.com. So enjoy, have fun, and as always, I hope that your life is filled with love and your Maj hands are filled with jokers. Good luck.